Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening for everyone who's joining us, wherever you are around the world. We want to welcome you. So, my name is Dana Saleh, and I'm the Education USA advisor in Lebanon. Today, we're going to have with us Rachel Chehayeb, who's going to be talking about applying to US medical schools as an international student. Um, First, let me introduce Education USA and our services, and then we're gonna give the floor to Rachel. So Education USA is a network of centers around the globe to help students go and study in the US. Those centers are funded by US Department of State, and we're here to help all students, and our services are free of charge. So we urge you, if you wanna study in the US, seek Education USA centers in your country, look for them, reach out to them, and see how you can benefit from our services. So you can attend graduate workshops or undergraduate workshops. You can attend and know more details about scholarships, funding opportunities, any kind of fairs or virtual fairs that are happening around the world. At this point, our centers and our events are all virtual, but eventually once the pandemic is over, we're gonna go back to welcoming you in our centers, and we would love to work with each one of you who wants to study in the US. We can answer any questions you want, anything that is related to applying, doing the research about funding and finances, pre-departure orientations, US visas, and anything to make sure that you apply to US universities, get accepted, and then apply for the visa and make it to the US successfully. Um, I also want to thank Rachel for volunteering and sharing her time with us today, and she's going to be sharing her own personal experience. Please, if you have questions for her, write them in the chat box, and we will get to them eventually. By the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A. Also, we ask everyone to please write your country and what is your level. Are you an undergraduate student? Are you a high school student? Just so that Rachel can know how to tailor her presentations to help you better. Welcome everyone, and now we're gonna go to Rachel. So Rachel is one of our own students. We helped Rachel go to the US. Back in 2014-15, she worked with us, and eventually she got accepted to US University with a full scholarship, and she's gonna talk about that. And here she is today, sharing her success story. A lot of students have a lot of questions about medical school, and we thought if one of our own can do it, everyone should work hard to do that. So she's a great example. She's an outstanding student for sure, but if she was able to do it, I'm sure a lot of you would take inspiration from her story and work hard to get into US universities as well. Rachel, I'm gonna give you the floor. I know you have a lot to say about that. So again, everyone, if you have questions, just write them in the chat box.
Thank you, Dana, for the introduction. I really appreciate it. And again, as Dana mentioned, I was an Education USA student 4 years ago in all of your shoes, and I chose to come to the States for undergrad with a deep interest in medical school, but I struggled throughout my undergraduate years without having access to clear information regarding applying to medical schools as an international student. There are very few international medical students in the States, and I'm hoping that through giving you this presentation, we'll start to change the narrative around accessibility of medical schools to international students. So I hope you learned from my experience today, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions you have at the end. So before I talk to you about applying to medical school in the States, we need to first tackle the question of choosing medicine. As you all know, medicine is a long road, and it requires lots of sacrifices, and the journey is long and demanding. So the primary thing that you should do before embarking on this journey, especially in the States, is to be absolutely sure that medicine is the career for you, because approaching the process without certainty that you cannot imagine yourself doing anything else is how you are going to have the resilience and the perseverance to make it through. So what makes medicine different from other fields, and what does medicine require? So at the heart of choosing medicine should be a desire to alleviate suffering and promote health in all of its components. And that doesn't just mean physical health, it can also mean mental health, emotional health. people who choose medicine are usually greatly invested in the health of the communities, both the communities they come from and the communities they live in at the moment. Medicine requires a passion for interacting with and helping patients and building meaningful relationships. And of course, a love of science and learning and an interest in the biomedical sciences. So once you've chosen medicine and with the goal of assumingly coming to the States for medical school, let's review the U.S. medical school education system. So how does medicine work in this country? So in the States, usually you come here for your undergraduate degree. You do 4 years at a college or 2 years at a community college, and then you transfer to a 4-year program. And as Dana mentioned, Education USA has a wealth of resources to help you with the first step of coming here for college. During college, you can major in whatever you want, as long as you fulfill the pre-med requirements, and we are going to come back and talk about those in a bit. And then after that, you apply to medical school. Medical school is another 4 years, and there's 2 types of medical schools. You can either get the MD degree, and that's the allopathic medical school, or you can get the DO degree from an osteopathic medical school that is more focused on manipulative medicine. And though international students can apply to both, usually our interest is in the MD degrees because those are internationally recognized and allow you to practice anywhere you want. For instance, back home in Lebanon. After medical school, you go on to apply to residency, and there's so many options in residency. They range from 3 to 7 years, and some people pursue further fellowships and specialization. So as you can see, medicine has a whole world with so many different options, and you can always find yourself in your little niche in medicine. So to become a practicing physician in the States, there are 2 ways to get there. The first is to come to the States for your undergraduate studies and then do the whole process here, which is what I have experience with and which I'm going to be tackling. But I don't want to dismiss that a lot of people do their medical school education in Lebanon and then come to the States for residency. Well, personally, since I chose the first, I'm going to advocate for the first because I believe that coming to the States for college in itself is an invaluable experience. You get to grow and learn and explore new cultures. You get the liberal arts education. You are faced with so many opportunities to pursue research. You grow independently. So it is definitely worth coming to college for the States. And there's tons of resources about that with Education USA, but why strive for a US medical school? So what are the advantages of coming to the US for medical school versus coming here later on for residency? Well, with a US MD degree, you can practice anywhere in the world. You are at the forefront of breaking edge science and research. You're in a big medical institution, even as a first-year medical student. You are trained for so much more than seeing patients. As a medical student in the States, you are trained as an educator, as a researcher. You are trained in biostatistics, and so many people get joint degrees with public health and business. So it is a very wide training, and you have more opportunities for research and a greater chance of matching into a competitive specialty if that is what you're pursuing. And you also integrate into the system in the States early on. You start your training at a US medical hospital and you get to know the system, and you have an easier time with licensing. So obviously, as you can see, it's much easier to integrate into the system if you come from a US medical school than coming from abroad. So hopefully those are some reasons for you to consider coming to the US, both for undergrad and for medical school. And if you're convinced, I'm going to start talking about the journey itself and what that would look like. So obviously the medical school journey starts with your pre-med years in college. One thing I wanted to say is that pre-med or undergrad is 4 years. That's a lot of time. You can do a lot of things in 4 years. So the primary rule is to follow your passions. You should major in what you love. You should not see pre-med as restrictive. People can double major and also be pre-med. People can study abroad and be pre-med. You can be pre-med and anything else you want. So as long as you plan wisely and you seek advice from your PreHealth offices and international medical students, and as long as you engage in extracurriculars that interest you, you are building yourself and your personality for medical school. So again, with extracurriculars, you should always aim for ones that are deeper and more meaningful over short experiences. And the most important rule is that pre-med should not be restrictive, because college, again, is a time to build yourself without any professional inclinations at first. But that being said, obviously, there are some requirements that you need to fit it into your schedule. And those are, as are listed here, a set of courses. For instance, you need to take a year of biology with labs, a year of chemistry with labs, a year of organic chemistry with labs. You're required to take biochemistry and physics and English and psychology. And those differ by medical school, which is why, again, I mentioned the PreHealth advisors. So all colleges in the States have PreHealth offices in which you are assigned an advisor to meet with. And every semester you can meet with your advisor and plan your coursework to make sure you're fulfilling your pre-med requirements. Other ways of preparing for medical school are shadowing physicians. Now, so many times applicants ask me, how many hours should I shadow? Do I have enough? The purpose of shadowing isn't accumulating hours, it's making sure that you're right for medicine. So medical schools will have a hard time believing someone genuinely is convinced that someone's genuinely convinced of medicine without having seen it and seeing what a doctor's life is like. So you need to reach out to physicians in nearby hospitals for shadowing opportunities and see what it's like to be a physician day in, day out. Find opportunities for community engagement, because shadowing is passive. You're not really doing much. Most of who is benefiting is yourself. But with community engagement, you can find ways to use your skill set to help. For instance, most of us are fluent in Arabic, and Arabic translators are very much needed in the States. So I volunteered as an Arabic translator in both clinical and non-clinical settings. Joining student organizations is another great way to get involved. So you can work on local or global public health. You can work on health equity. And of course, summers in college, while they're a time to rest, they also provide lots of time to get involved in community service or research that appeals to you. And so many times when we hear, oh, you should do research to get into med school, we assume that that purely means basic science, wet lab work, but research can take on many forms. You can do clinical research and be in a hospital setting. You can do public health research and either be in an office or on the field. So there's always ways to make research work for you and find something that genuinely interests you. And of course, college is also a great time to take advantage of study abroad options and unique opportunities that your college offers, because anything that you learn from and that helps you grow is preparing you to become a better physician down the line. And as I mentioned, pre-health advising, almost all schools have newsletters where they circulate all of those opportunities. So make sure coming to the US for college to subscribe early on in your first year to all of the newsletters that your school has to hear about those different opportunities. So far we've talked about what the process looks like and how you should spend your time in college. But what is actually required for the application? So usually, apart from completion of pre-med classes, you also need 3 to 5 letters of recommendation. You need to talk about your activities in the activities section, and you need to take your MCAT. I'm going to get to the MCAT and activities portion later, but let me tell you a bit about letters of recommendation now. So usually, letters of recommendation are an essential tool because they help medical schools see that you have all the. So usually you would get 1 to 2 letters of recommendation from a science professor. You would get 1 from a non-science professor, someone who taught you English or history. Then you would also get 1 from your research mentor if you did research. If you volunteered in a clinical setting, you can get 1 from your clinical mentor or clinical supervisor. And about letters of recommendation, the key to getting good letters of recommendation is having strong bonds with faculty members at your college. And obviously you should do this regardless of whether or not you need a letter of recommendation, because those are going to be your primary source of mentorship and support throughout the process. So building strong relationships with your professors early on is key, especially as an international student. Go to office hours, participate in class, express interest in the research, really put in the effort, because I found that in my college experience, my professors have been my primary advocates throughout all of my 4 years at Yale. So we talked about letters of recommendation showing competencies. So what are the traits of a successful applicant? What are the core competencies that you need? So as you can see, this is from the AAMC website. The AAMC stands for the Association of American Medical Colleges. They are the organization that administer the MCAT, but they're also the organization that have the medical school application system. So some of you might be familiar with the College Board for the SAT. So the AAMC is the equivalent of that for medical school. So those core competencies include science competencies and thinking and reasoning competencies, but they also include a lot of pre-professional competencies. So the science competencies you can get from doing research and from taking science classes. The thinking and reasoning competencies you can get from any major. And this goes back to talking about how the choice of major is not important as long as it's interesting to you. So anything you do can help you become a better critical thinker, can increase your written communication. And then the pre-professional competencies, those are the most important in my opinion. And you build those outside of the classroom. You build those by engaging and volunteering. Those include service orientation, social skills, cultural competence, teamwork, oral communication, reliability and dependability, resilience and adaptability. So no matter what activity you do, you can always be training yourself in these competencies and becoming a better team member, a better leader, more culturally competent, etc. So there's so many different ways to build these competencies. Those are areas of growth that we're always working on. They're a lifelong project. So apart from letters of recommendation and activities, let's talk a bit more about the MCAT. So what is the MCAT? The MCAT is a 7.5-hour exam. It's very long. It requires lots of preparation, but it is very important in showing medical schools that you have mastered what it takes to be a medical student. So it tests lots of different fields like reading, biochemistry, psychology, sociology, biology, chemistry, and physics. There's so much, there's so many resources out there to prepare for the MCAT. This is a brief presentation, so I can't go into too much depth, but the AAMC does publish an MCAT testing calendar every year. And before you take your MCAT and sign up for it, you should block out a few months to study. And usually you need to take it at least a year and 3 months before you apply. So it's a year and 3 months before you start medical school. So it's May or June at the start of the application cycle. And I'll come back and talk about the application cycle in more details. So let's recap. So far we know what college as a pre-med looks like. We know what is required for the application process. And now the question is, when do I apply? So while back home in Arab countries, it's very common to go straight through medical school. In the States, what we see increasingly is that lots of people are choosing to take time off between undergrad and medical school. You don't have to do that. Some people go straight through. That's my own experience. I applied straight from college. But I do want to mention that deciding when to apply is a factor, especially when it comes to international students. So again, you can start medical school right after college, or you can take 1 or more gap years. For many, gap years have financial benefits. They allow you to, you can work, you can pursue other degrees. If, for instance, if you have a deep interest in public health, lots of medical students enter medical school with a master's of public health. They give you a chance to strengthen your CV, to do more research. Gap years can also serve as a break from school and allow you to explore work and other interests and passions. There's no one right way to do it. It's a case-by-case basis. If you decide to go straight through though, you should apply in the summer after your junior year of college. So the application cycle starts a full year before you start medical school. So what are some gap year options? For those of you who don't know, when you come to the States for college, you come on an F1 visa. And being on an F1 visa, after you graduate, you get to work. You basically get a work permit. And that is called the optional practical training. It has to be in your field of study. If you did a STEM major, you get 3 years. And if you didn't, you only get 1 year. And so lots of people choose to use their OPT to do research work, public health work. You can work in startups, healthcare consulting, and a nonprofit. So as you can see, there are many options. Now, whether or not you take a gap year, knowing the medical school timeline is important. So let's go through that. So again, if you're applying straight through, usually you take the MCAT between the summers of year 2 till the June of the summer after year 3. So you have almost a year to take it. Taking it any time before the end of your sophomore year or your second year is probably too early. You wouldn't have had the time to finish the coursework required. And the latest you can take it is the summer in which you're applying, so a year before you start med school. So the MCAT's definitely timing it properly so that you have your scores and time to apply is crucial. And if you were, again, to apply straight through, after your junior year, you need to submit the primary AMCAS. The AMCAS is our version of the Common App. It stands for American Medical College Application Service. And usually the earliest you can submit it is May 31st of the application cycle. So I submitted mine after my junior year on May 31st. As international students, it is crucial to submit early, and I will come back and talk about that. So after you send out a primary AMCAS, you send it to all the medical schools you're interested in. The schools that like you are going to send you back a secondary application, and that's going to have supplementary questions. They're going to ask you things like, why do you want to come to our school? Or tell us about an ethical conflict, a dilemma that you face, just to try and get to know you better. And then once they've read through your primary and secondary applications, they will start offering you interviews, and interviews are in person. So again, this is the same timeline, but if you're taking one gap year, you will apply to medical school after you graduate college, but everything else is the same. So to submit a primary application, you sign up for an account at the AAMC website. The primary application, it's common, it's centralized, you send it to all schools, there's a drop-down menu, and you choose the schools that you want. It opens for submission on May 31st. As internationals, you want to submit as early as possible. The longer you wait, the lesser your chances. And then for the primary, you're going to requires letters of recommendations, transcripts, activities list, and a personal statement. So again, after you submit your primaries, the schools will do a primary review of your application, and then they're going to send you the secondaries. The rule of thumb is to submit your secondaries within 2 weeks of receiving them. So for instance, I applied to about 20 schools, and those 20 schools sent me almost all at the same time, 20 different secondaries, and I had 2 weeks to submit those back. So the key to doing that is to pre-write or brainstorm your secondaries. So what I did is that after I submitted my primaries, I had about a month until my application gets processed. So I used that month to look up the prompts from previous years online and start brainstorming what I would say for those secondaries, because the secondary questions don't change much within each school between year and year. And then after that, after I submitted my primary and my secondaries, I was done around mid-July. Around early August, I started hearing back for interviews. And again, this is a comprehensive presentation, so I don't have a lot of time to talk about preparing for the interviews, but you should be prepared. And usually that means knowing your application very well inside out, keeping up with the latest scientific breakthroughs, keeping up with health policy news, and just having a very good idea of what you're getting yourself into as a medical student. And then you start hearing back from schools after you're done interviewing. The earliest you can hear back is around December and up until March. So by March, you'll know those are the acceptances that I have, those are the financial aid, those are my financial aid packages. And then you'll have about a month to review your financial aid offers, make a financial plan, and commit by April 31st. And if you're waitlisted, you'll hear back from the waitlist after April 31st. So this is what it looks like. This is what it would look like for an international student, for an American student. Then why am I giving a presentation specifically about applying as an international student? And that is because there is a big lack of information about what it takes to be an international student and apply to medical school. So as you can see, this is a screenshot from the AAMC website. And even the way they phrase the question, do US medical schools ever accept international students? It makes you feel like it's almost impossible, right? So as you can see, the short answer is yes. It's not common, but the percentage being 1 to 2%, that is definitely a myth. It is definitely more than that. And I promise you, people who plan early and are organized do have a real shot at getting accepted. So international students struggle due to a lack of clear information and guidance. They're often discouraged from applying and often know of no one who's been through the process. So that was something I struggled with, not having any mentors who were international medical students. And another big struggle is financial, receiving aid in terms of scholarships or subsidized loans. Neither of those are guaranteed, although this is the end goal, to get into med school with financial support. So I'm going to talk more specifically about the common challenges faced by international students, and then tell you a bit about ways that we can overcome those challenges. So a big challenge is the cost of applying to medical school. You're going to be paying for every primary, every secondary, and every interview. The cost of financing medical school in the States is as expensive as doing 4 years of undergrad, but there's much less support. There's a limited number of medical schools that accept internationals. For instance, public universities, because they are financed by the US government, don't really want to give their money to give their training spots to international students. So it's very rare to see a public university taking an international medical student. There's also a lack of information and statistics on mentorship. Some schools even require escrow accounts. And just to give you an idea, an escrow account is an account that you have to put in a bank that the school chooses and deposit in it 4 years of tuition and living expenses before even starting medical school. So obviously, when you see all of those challenges, students are often discouraged by the uncertainty and the stress of the process. So how do you maximize your chances? How do you get over those challenges? The first thing is applying when you are ready. So if you know that you need the money to apply to medical school, take a gap year and work, or ask family members for support, or seek out loans early on. Seek mentorship early and consistently, and have a financial plan for financing med school, whether that means taking a loan from your home country, having arrangements with family members or with sponsors, with nonprofits. This is something you definitely need to be thinking about early on. And obviously some schools do give money in aid, but you also need to be prepared if you're applying for the possibility that the only schools that you're going to get into won't be able to offer you any financial support, and you're going to have to seek it out and be creative in your own way. So I'm excited to tell you, though, that the landscape is changing, and that in the past few months, we've seen this new organization, F1 Doctors, which is fully comprised of international medical students that have been through the process and want to help. So I would definitely encourage you to Google F1 Doctors and visit our website. And the main goal is support and representation for international pre-meds, to have that be on the rise. So if you are in the US as a college student, if you're planning to come here as a college student, definitely seek out mentors, several mentors early on, because medical school and the pre-med journey is full of small decisions, and at every point seek out mentorship to make sure that you're making the best decision and putting you on the path for success. And just to give you some words of encouragement, on the F1 Doctors website, you can actually see that international students from more than 20 countries actually made it to US medical schools, and they're from all over the world. So there's definitely hope. So I'm going to talk a bit more about financing medical school. So there is a spreadsheet, and I can share this presentation with everyone later so you can access the spreadsheet that tells you about all of the 40 schools that accept international students, and also what their financial aid looks like, whether they have forms or scholarships. Another option for any of you who have family or family friends in the States, if you know someone who has a green card or is a permanent resident, you can have them co-sign your loans, and that will make you eligible for almost all of the health profession loan options that are usually available to American citizens. There's also an increasing number of lenders who do not require a US co-signer, not international, sorry about that. And those include Stilt, Prodigy Finance, Empower Financing, and they're specifically there to help international students. You can also get private loans from sponsors. Those are also an option. I do want to note, though, I know that we don't only have Lebanese students on this website, on this presentation, but because Lebanon is currently sanctioned, given the economic crisis, that's slightly limited your options for loans. I don't know how the landscape for that is going to change in the upcoming years, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Tell them I'm Lebanese and make sure that you're still eligible. So I've been talking for a while, but I just want to sum up some general advice that I think is crucial. So building a network of mentors and a strong support system early on, the process is long, it requires a lot of time and energy. So make sure that you have the support, include your family members, include your friends, tell them what's going on, and have them rooting for you along the way. And building a network of international medical students in general can also be very helpful. And hopefully that's where you'll use the F1 Docs website and just email anyone you want. Asking for help at every leg of the journey. Don't go through this alone. Whether it's your personal statement, send it to your friends, send it to your health professions office. Make sure you get a second look of eyes. Build a strong repertoire of letters of recommendations, and prepare yourself for interviews. Yeah, primarily having faith in yourself, believing you can do it. That is what's going to carry you through. Knowing your options, know that you can take a gap year, you can do DO school, and keep in mind that there's never a dead end. Lots of people apply and then reapply, and other people find different ways to get involved in healthcare. So for more information, definitely visit the AAMC. They have so many resources on all aspects of the process. Subscribe to your health professions newsletter, make the most of the resources page of F1 Doctors, since this information is tailored to international medical students. There's also a free guide to medical school admissions. And again, I'll share this presentation with you and you can press on the link and find it. And then there's also the list of schools that accept international students. And let me tell you, that list has 40 schools. So that is a lot of schools. Well, I guess that is it. Thank you, Education USA, for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Rachel. So we're going to ask everyone, if you have questions, please write them in the chat box so that Rachel can answer your questions. I think, Rachel, you did an amazing job. It was really clear, so people got it. But if anyone still have questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box so that we can answer the questions. We also have with us Education USA Cairo and West Bank. And they're all saying it was a great presentation. So thank you, Rachel.
I'm glad to have been helpful.
Rachel, can you tell us, I know it's a personal experience, but can you tell us where did you apply and what kind of packages and scholarships you got?
Yes, I think that is very important. So I ended up applying to about 20 med schools. I got interviews from about 8 of them. And then from there, I got about 4 acceptances and 4 waitlists. And my acceptances were from Yale, from Harvard, from Hopkins, from Vanderbilt, and also from St. Louis University. But again, out of the 5 schools I was accepted to, only 2 of them were able to give me substantial financial aid. Those were Harvard and Yale. And Yale's financial aid policy was extremely generous. They were very accepting of the situation in Lebanon and offered me a full tuition scholarship and only had me take out a loan that they provided for living expenses. So I personally felt very grateful at the end of the road, and I had no doubt that this was the right choice for me. And if you go on the website, and you'll see so many international medical students from all over the world had very similar experiences. So it's definitely not impossible. You should always prepare for the worst. For instance, I was looking at banks, I was applying to loans, but also know that it is possible to receive a lot of financial aid from universities too.
Perfect. All right. So I think they're coming. So Layan is asking what requirements or scores that you achieved and helped you get into medical school.
Right. So again, this differs between person and person. Personally, I've always loved science, and I chose to major in biochemistry. So what I really focused on was distinguishing myself through research. I did lots of research. I spent 2 whole summers in the States working in a lab. And that allowed me to get published. So I think that helped me stand out. I also think that, as I mentioned earlier, I volunteered a lot as an Arabic translator, and I volunteered in a free clinic. I spent almost every Saturday packaging medications, but also translating for Arab refugees living in New Haven. New Haven, where I live, is a sanctuary city, so we have a big refugee population. So I think the combination of me being Lebanese and being able to serve as a cultural liaison for the Arab population, and also having a really deep interest in research, really helped me stand out.
So I'm going to combine a few questions together. Where did you do your undergraduate studies? And the other one is, what boosted your chances of getting in most? Was it more the specific research that you did or the professional experience?
So I did my undergrad at Yale. I don't think it was just one thing. I think what they're looking for really is the end product. Like, what is your character like after all of the experiences that you've done? So obviously my research helped a lot in helping me develop scientific thinking and gain an inclination, and made me realize, for instance, that I would like to do academic medicine, and that's something schools appreciated. But also my professional experiences helped me build my passion for medicine. So again, what all medical schools are looking for are three things. They want to know that you want to help people, you like being involved, you like being there for patients, but they also know that you want to do it through science, right? Because you can help people as a social worker, you can help people as a human rights lawyer. So they're always looking for an inclination to help people specifically through mastering science and mastering the human biology. So I think finding ways to show them that you have this very clearly is usually the way to go.
The other questions are about the MCAT, your personal experience, and how did you study for it?
Right, so I never took time off to study for the MCAT. I started studying for it towards the end of the summer before my junior year, and I took it that December. So I studied for it across 1 month of summer, in which I was working as a research assistant, and then throughout my junior fall, and then I went home to Lebanon for Christmas break. I took some practice tests then and came back to the States and took it the next week. So I personally found that just having it be part of your life for a few months and just doing practice tests when you can, fitting it in, and just, again, remembering that it's not a race. You don't have to study nonstop every day for a few hours, but it's about consistent effort over a few months. That's what I personally found to work best. And again, the double AMC, I always tell people it is the best resource that you have. Lots of times people ask me, what books did you use? Did you use Kaplan, Princeton Review? There is nothing like the original material that comes from the double AMC, because those are the only thing that are authentically the same as the MCAT. So definitely sign up on their website and sign up for try to find secondhand books, etc., flashcards that are from the double AMC.
Someone else is asking if they studied their undergraduate in Lebanon or any other country, not the US, and then they start applying to the medical school. Would that hurt their chances or reduce their chances?
So to be honest, I'm not sure about that. Personally, I haven't met anyone who's done that. But again, I was just talking about how we shouldn't say there's a 1 to 2%. I do think, though, that lots of times the schools want you to have taken the pre-med requirements at a US college. So I think what I would suggest is looking into pre-med post-bac programs. Those are usually 2-year programs where you come to the States, you can take all the pre-med requirements and then apply to med school. So if you have the, if you are set on coming here for medical school, definitely look up PreHealth programs, and I can send that in the chat. So look at PreHealth post-bac programs. And those are usually 2-year programs that I think after doing one, you would be eligible to apply.
Someone is asking, can we apply to medical school with an associate degree only?
No, so you need a bachelor's degree. So if you're in a community college, definitely transfer over and get your bachelor's. And also 2 years is too little of a time to accumulate enough experience. So the 4 years give you a lot of time to really build your application.
Someone else is asking, do you need to take the SAT 1?
So not for med school. Obviously, to come here for college, you're going to need the SAT 1 unless you go to a school that doesn't require it. But for medical school, they're just going to ask for the MCAT.
Fun fact about Rachel, she got 1,600 on the SAT, so that's not a question for Rachel. So someone is asking, is there any fully funded financial aid for international students? I think you already answered that, but if you can just answer it again.
Yes, for instance, some schools, if your family situation is, if your family income is beyond a certain threshold, you will be eligible to get full tuition scholarships. And also some other schools do give merit aid for international students. For example, I know the University of Pennsylvania and Washington University have full merit scholarships, cover all of your tuition that you can definitely get as an international student.
I think we're going to take one final question, and it says, how did you choose and compile your list of medical schools to apply to?
Right, so that's a very good question. Let me tell you, you don't have much of a choice. As an international student, I filtered through schools that accept international students and then schools that give financial aid, and that left me with about 20. So, and again, if you go on the F1 Doctors website, there's an Excel sheet that has all of this information. Another thing I wanted to say that shook me is financial aid for medical school is very different from college. So financial aid doesn't mean they're going to meet your full need. You might have a need of $60,000 and I might just give you 10, but that still counts as a school that offers financial aid. So don't have very high expectations and always plan for different options of financing med school.
All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. And we want to thank everyone who joined us today. Someone is asking if they can take your email and any future, if they have future questions. Yes. I don't know if that's something you're comfortable doing. Feel free. If not, then it's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to share my email on the chat, and whoever has questions can save it.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We thank you for your time and congratulations on all the achievements you've done. Everyone, thank you so much. And later on, if you have questions about studying in the US in general, feel free to reach out to us. Our email is beirut@educationusa.org, and we're here to help you. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.